Well, happy Easter once again to everyone. You could say it. I didn't really leave that entirely clear for you, did I? But you did a good job. So it is a blessed and happy and joyous day. I'm grateful to be able to be here with you in person. For those of you who have joined us online, welcome one and all. A special welcome to anyone who might be here with us today for the very first time. A wonderful day to come for the very first time, or perhaps for the first time in a long time. We're seeing more of that these days as things gradually are changing around us with regard to this pandemic. So welcome one and all. Of course, Easter Sunday is really the most special Sunday of the year for us. And this day here in our parish, in a smaller way, is significant also, because today we're beginning a brand new message series. You probably know by now, many of you, if not most, that as a parish we're trying now to take a topic, a theme, or an idea, and over a series of weeks kind of delve into it a little bit to explore it a little bit further and how it might impact our lives. And the series that we're starting today is about love. It's called Love Lives. Both words are highly significant to us. So, to begin, I'm going to share my keen insight into you. And I'm going to say that there are at least two things that I know about each and every one of you who is here today, and I know these things for certain. First, you want to be a person who truly loves the people who are in your life. You want the people in your life to feel the love you have for them. That's why you go to a great deal of effort to spend time with them and to get together with them as you are able in ordinary times, for example, in times past and, please God, times future. You might plan parties and gatherings because you want to be with people and you want them to be together. You do this at your house so your family will get together. Perhaps these days you're organizing drive-by birthday parties. We have to adapt as we can, but whichever it is, you are the one who brings your friends and your family together. You want those people to feel the love that you have for them. Perhaps you express this love, allowing them to feel it and to experience it by buying gifts and presents for them. That's a good thing. At Christmas or at birthdays, you put time and energy into giving thoughtful gifts. Or you like to surprise your spouse, your kids, or your family by bringing home a special gift for them from time to time. You might choose to show your love by making it known by giving words of encouragement and affirmation, a great gift indeed. You are then an encourager. You are constantly pointing out the great things that you see in your friends and your family. You say, "You did an awesome job." Things like that just come naturally to you. They're easy for you to say, and your love is visible and known by others. Perhaps, and this one is a kind of a painful reminder of what this pandemic has cost us, but I know that indeed it is true of some of you. Perhaps, in ordinary times at least, you are great at showing love through physical touch. You are what we like to call sometimes a hugger. And your friends and your family workers, and even your co-workers perhaps experience your love and concern for them through your hugs. Please God, we will one day be able to hug again. Either way, your love is made known. You may also express your love through acts of service. When something needs to be done, whether it's at work or whether it's around the house, even here in the parish for many of you, when something needs to be done, if you have a friend in need, for example, you are right there. You work extra hard to serve them, to serve your family, for example, so that your children can have good things and a high quality of life. If you're married, you want, of course, to love your spouse, and you want to show care and concern for them. If you're a parent, you want your children, your kids, to know that you love them. And you don't just want them to know it, but to experience it and to feel it. You want them to be able to have confidence in that fact. You want your parents to know you love them. If you have siblings, you want them to know that you love them. You show your love, perhaps, at least I did when I was this age, by harassing them, teasing them, and fighting with them. But love them you do, and show that love you also do. Now, if you are here today at St. Pius or joining us online, as I said, you are someone who wants to love the people around you. But I said I know two things about you. There's a second fact that I know, and that is this: You don't always love the people around you as much as you want. Even though you have a desire to express love and to make that love visible and known for the people you love, you often fall short. While you are trying to love others, so often you don't. You find yourself being self-centered and doing what you want rather than making the loving choice. You want to love your spouse, but too often you end up choosing what is best for you. Rather than giving the time you want to give or saying encouraging words, you wind up spending time on your own or saying critical things at just the wrong moment. You want your children to feel your love and affection for them, but too often you find yourself raising your voice, yelling at them, or being critical of them. You want to serve. You want to serve your coworkers or your classmates, your friends, whatever it may be. But when opportunities to serve present themselves, or to opportunities that might call for a little sacrifice, instead you choose to serve yourself. You're selfish. None of us loves people the way we want to love them. We find ourselves falling short of our own goals and our own desires to love others. We want to do better, but we're not sure we have the knowledge or the wisdom to do so. But if that describes you, well, then you have picked the perfect weekend to join us. Because Easter, and Easter is not just a day, it is a season, Easter is all about accessing, tapping into the power that allows us to love better. And we see this described in the reading that we heard from the Acts of the Apostles. The first reading during the Easter season is from the New Testament, so our first reading today was from the Acts of the Apostles, which is the story of the very, very early Christian church. And over the course of that book, we see how Jesus established his church to be a movement in the world, something that changes the world. In other words, a movement specifically to make God's love visible in the world. The movement worked and continues to work, if we do our job, to shatter the idea that God's love is just for certain groups of people. The movement, the church, shatters the idea that God's love was just for people of a certain nationality, or for people who are religious and come to church on Sunday, or for good people. The movement also worked and continues to work, again, if we follow the Lord closely. It works to shatter the idea that God's love is dependent in some way on our actions and our behaviors. We're tempted to think that, but it's not true. It worked and it continues to work to shatter the idea that God loves you when you do good, but doesn't love you when you sin or do something wrong. That is false. In the passage that we heard proclaimed today, Peter describes Jesus and his life to a man named Cornelius and his family, so that he better understands this movement of God's love. Peter says this: "You know the message that spread throughout Judea, beginning in Galilee, after the baptism that John announced, how God anointed Jesus of Nazareth with the Holy Spirit and with power." If we're ever tempted to think of Jesus as some vague spirit hovering over the world, we can turn to those words. When Jesus spoke of him, he said, Jesus of Nazareth, a particular person from a particular place. Anointed, though, with the Holy Spirit and with power. Now, the truth is that almost everyone in that part of the world knew about Jesus. In fact, crowds of people, as we hear over and over again in the Gospels, would come out to hear Jesus preach and teach. Wherever he went, he drew people towards him, almost like a rock star in our day. The people who knew Jesus knew that he was powerful. However, his power and his strength that were evident to everyone who met him didn't come from position. His power is not like holding an office, like being the Prime Minister of Canada or the President of the United States. And the reason it didn't come from that is because Jesus held no position. He had no position of authority of any kind. He didn't run a company. He didn't rule as king. He didn't even have an office in the religious organization of the day. Jesus' power went beyond that, and it went beyond the physical power as well. It was and remains a spiritual power, a power that seemed to come from deep within him, that came from who he was. And it's interesting in the Greek. Exousia, the word for power, means from being, comes from who you are, and that describes Jesus perfectly. Peter continues, Jesus went about doing good and healing all who were oppressed by the devil. We are witnesses of all that he did, both in Judea and in Jerusalem. Jesus was, and Jesus is, love in action. Peter says that Jesus went about doing good. To Peter's audience, the phrase that he used for doing good had echoes of something else. It had echoes of the word that was used for benefactor, which was a word that was commonly used to describe ancient rulers when they provided good things for others. It reinforces the idea that Jesus brought great power. He brought power to stand up for the lowly and to defend them. He had a power and an ability to develop relationships with people unconnected with God. We're called to do that as well. He had a power that enabled him to feed thousands of people with simply 5 loaves and 2 fish. Through his power, Jesus challenged the corrupt religious systems that were oppressing people. He taught and encouraged people to give to the poor. He lovingly challenged people to get rid of self-defeating behaviors, ways of thinking and acting that are limiting their ability to grow into the person they desire to be. He challenged people to get rid of those things. All of this came from a power, as I said, not of position or office, but rather an internal spiritual power that came from within. Jesus healed people. He healed people who were sick and had diseases. He healed people of leprosy, which was the most awful disease of that time. It was the cancer of that age. When you hear that word today, you shudder. It was the same with leprosy in that day. He healed them. He made the blind see. He made the deaf hear. He gave a paralytic the ability to walk and a mute boy the ability to speak. The Gospels tell us, in fact, that Jesus would spend whole days healing people who came to him, and so many did. In a world of hurt, and that was the world that Jesus came into, and it's the world in which we live as well. In a world of hurt, Jesus brought healing to so many people. Whenever you see Jesus in the Gospels, what you see is love in action. Sometimes his love was kind. Sometimes his love was gentle. Sometimes it was fierce and challenging. Jesus did challenge people. But every time you see Jesus, you see love in action. And so we would assume that since Jesus was love in action, he would have been met by positive feelings by everyone. Of course, if someone loves others, does good, brings healing to a broken world, that person will be accepted and loved by everyone, right? Well, we know a little bit better. That is not, sadly, the way the world always works. No good deed, we might say, ironically, goes unpunished. We live in a broken and fallen world. We live in a world stained by sin where justice is not always done. We live in a world where good things happen to bad people and bad things happen to good people. You can do good and people may not like it, or you. You can do good and people will criticize you. The world is fallen, and so people who do good are not always appreciated. This is what happened to Jesus. Jesus acted with perfect love. And what did he get as a result? Well, we know. That's what we've been remembering the last few days. Peter reminds us, though, in our reading from this morning, what happened to Jesus. They put him to death by hanging him on a tree. Who are they? Well, they were the Jewish religious leaders, the Roman political leaders, as well as a mob of Jesus' own people. The leaders were threatened by Jesus. They were threatened by his teaching, by his good works, his popularity. They held office. He had power. They were jealous and envious of him. So they killed Jesus by nailing him to a cross. Jesus loved, and the payment he received in return was to die the most agonizing death possible. Jesus loved others, and in payment, he received nails that pierced his hands and feet. It looked like love had died. Love had failed. Darkness celebrated as though love had lost. It looked like jealousy and anger and positional power and corruption and pride and greed and envy and all of those things, it looked like they had triumphed over love. It looked like love was powerless against the forces of darkness. That is the way it appeared. And that is the way this world also often appears. Let's face it, it's easy to be discouraged when we look at the world. It seems like darkness and death defeat light and life too often. All we need to do is look at the news. We hear so often of terrible crimes, mass murders, very often in the US, but even here in Canada. We see acts of terrorism, war, and violence that seem so utterly unnecessary and are so utterly unnecessary. We witness poverty in our own community, acts of injustice, division, dissent, sometimes even violence within families. It all seems so hopeless. That's the way Peter and others who followed Jesus felt the day he died. Imagine living your life seeing all these things that we are seeing today, encountering the one, Jesus, who they felt would bring a better world, and then seeing him defeated and die. Their hopes, their dreams were dashed. It was clear that love had lost. But then something happened. Something that no one expected, something that no one saw coming, not in a million years. Peter tells us. But God raised him on the third day. Jesus didn't stay dead. Jesus conquered death. On Easter Sunday, Jesus emerged from the grave victorious over sin and death and victorious over darkness, hatred, jealousy, and violence. On Good Friday, all these things seem to have won. But 3 days later, on Easter Sunday, Jesus came out of the tomb. And we heard that beautiful story this morning. The amazement that came with it. He who is love in action could not be defeated or kept down. And Easter Sunday is the celebration that love lives. God is love, and he lives. It is the celebration that love and light are greater than death and darkness. And not just in the gospel stories. It's a celebration that that same power that gave Jesus the ability to love others is available and present to us. We can access that power. Through a relationship with Jesus Christ, we can access the power to love people around us the way we really want to love them. We don't do that, we don't accomplish that gift, that goal, purely by more effort on our part. We can't just clench our teeth and become exactly like Jesus. We don't have that, but we can access what we need. And that's what this series is all about. So I'm going to ask you to take 2 action steps yourself today, especially if you're new or if this is your first time in church or joining us online. First time in a long time or first time ever. I'm going to ask all of you, though, to take these 2 steps. First is simple. Commit to be with us, and many of you have already done that. You're going to join us. You're going to be here or online for the next few weeks of this series, because we're going to look each week at how we can access the power we need to love the people in our lives the way we really, truly do want to love them. The answer, as I said, though, is not to try harder and to exercise our willpower. We can accomplish a lot by willpower, but this we cannot do. The answer, rather, is letting God's power, God's life, God's love flow through us in a relationship with Christ, so that it can then flow into our relationship with others. That's the first thing. Stick around as we look into this, as we encounter and identify the places where the ways in which we can have that happen in our life. The second action that I'm asking you to take is going to take place in just a couple of moments. Something that happens each and every Easter Sunday. We in our church return to a very ancient tradition. Those baptized are invited to renew the promises that were made at their baptism, their profession of faith, their denial of evil. And then in the non-COVID years, we sprinkle you with water, the water reminding us of our baptism as well. But even if you're not baptized, you can participate. It's a simple set of questions, each of which we answer, I do. Now, you certainly don't have to do that, but you're welcome to do so. It's a way of recommitting for those of us who have done this before, or even committing for the first time to a loving relationship with the living Lord. It's a way to connect to Jesus and to the power that he has and desires nothing more than to share, the power that allows us to grow to love the people we want to love, the way we want to do it. Again, you don't have to. It's fine if you don't, but if you do, it might just give you a new perspective. Because the promise of Easter, and let's remember, Easter is not just one day, Easter is a season. Easter is even longer than Lent, if you can believe it. The promise of Easter is the promise that love lives. Love lives in the person of Jesus Christ. And because he lives, everyone connected to him lives forever.